You're about to discover the 3 massive mistakes that most single women make that keeps them attracting dead-end relationships. But more importantly, you'll learn how to avoid making these mistakes once and for all so that you can finally attract the right relationship with ease. So welcome, my name is Denise Dale, and thank you for clicking through to my video. I've been inspired by all the positive feedback I've received about my workshops, and all this feedback has motivated me to up the ante and try to reach even more women by offering this free webinar. It will definitely support you in your goal if you want to find the big love of your life, or if you just want to improve the relationship you have with yourself. So whatever the reason is, I hope you'll commit to listening to all 3 videos all the way through. The videos are all under 20 minutes, so it won't take up too much of your time, but they're jam-packed with useful information if you want to attract the one. So before we start, I have a few questions for you. Have you ever dated someone and even though you knew they weren't the one, you ignored your intuition and you went ahead with it anyway? Do you feel frustrated and confused and just can't help comparing yourself to others, wondering, why them and why not me? Have you ever settled for the first person who came along and showed an interest in you because maybe you feared being alone, or because you didn't believe you could ever have the kind of relationship that you really truly wanted? So you settled for what I call the better than nothing relationship. Have you ever mistaken sexual compatibility for love, or maybe friendship for romantic love? Have you ever stayed in a relationship even though you were miserable? You kept trying to work things out even though your partner showed absolutely no interest whatsoever in working through the problems with you? And last but not least, have you given up on love altogether? Now, if you've said yes to any of these questions, then you're not alone and you're in the right place. So during our time together, I will reveal the 3 massive mistakes most single women make that keeps them attracting dead-end relationships. But more importantly, I'll spend most of my time offering you immediate and practical ways to avoid making those mistakes forever. So in other words, I'm going to show you several easy to implement, totally effective strategies that will help you attract the right one with ease. Now, since we're going to be spending a little bit of time together, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself and how I came to be doing what I'm doing now. Because, a lot of you probably don't know me, and you may be wondering, what makes me an expert in this subject? Well, to begin with, I've been a counselor and a trainer for over 25 years now. I now live on the Sunshine Coast of Australia, but I'm originally from Canada. As for my education and training, I have a Diploma of Social Services, a Diploma of Counselling, and a Vocational Graduate Diploma of Grief and Loss Counselling. I'm also a Certified Master Practitioner of Neuro-Linguistic Programming and a practitioner of the One Brain System. So like I said, I've been doing this work for a very long time now, and over the years I've specialized in many different areas. However, time and again, my heart keeps bringing me back to this area, the area that I'm most passionate about, and that's helping people attract good, solid relationships. I much prefer helping someone improve the relationship they have with themselves, which in turn will help them attract a healthy and strong relationship with someone else, rather than help them try to fix a dysfunctional one. So let me tell you why I'm so passionate about this work. When I was younger, well, let's just say that I wasn't very lucky in love. I had a real knack for attracting a whole lot of really painful rejection. I didn't like myself very much back then. I was constantly judging and criticizing myself. Look, I didn't have a problem attracting men. Actually, I had a lot of men friends. But trying to get one of those men to fall in love with me, well, now that was a different story. I was a lot of fun, I was adventurous, so they really loved hanging out with me, but more times than not, when I'd fall for one of those guys, it would usually end up with either the, I really enjoy our time together, but I only want to be friends, or the, I'm not ready for a relationship right now, or the old, it's not you, it's me scenarios. I didn't understand why that kept happening. Surely it had to be more than bad luck. But for one thing for sure, it was always such a huge crush to my self-esteem. And the only way I could make sense of it all was to rationalize that there must be something wrong with me. I must be flawed in some major way. I must not be pretty enough, skinny enough, or just plain enough. You know, I was pretty depressed for most of my early 20s. I went through some pretty dark days. But, you know, I'm the type of person who doesn't give up very easily. So I set my mind to it and I made it my mission. I was determined to find someone who would love me back because I just didn't want to spend the rest of my life alone. You know, don't get me wrong. There's absolutely nothing wrong with being single or being on your own for that matter, but I just didn't want to spend my whole life alone. Eventually, I did fall in love. I was in my mid-20s. He was my first big love, and it was significant because he actually loved me back. So that relationship lasted for about 6 years, and for the most part, it was a really good relationship, but it ended in a very painful breakup. Not because he didn't love me, but because he wasn't ready to commit to me fully. And I wanted to get married. I wanted to start a family, and he just wasn't there. So I seemed to be a good magnet for all those non-committal, emotionally unavailable men. And, you know, even if they did fall in love with me, it still wasn't right. So after that breakup, I started thinking about this, and I started thinking, you know, maybe it has nothing to do with me. Or maybe it has nothing to do with the men. Maybe it has everything to do with me, right? So I had this huge epiphany there. And it made me even more determined than ever, because if it was coming from me, then that was something I had control over, right? It was something I could fix, that I could change. So that's all I needed to go into research mode. I was onto something here, and I could feel it. So I wanted to get my hands on any information that might help me shed some light on this. You know, back in those days, we didn't have webinars or computers for that matter, so I couldn't just, you know, sit at the computer and Google it like I would today. So instead, I went to the library. I started reading books. And one day I came across a book where the author suggested writing down all the qualities you want in a mate and then putting this list on your fridge so that every time you see it, you can visualize this person with all those qualities. And according to the law of attraction, I should be able to attract this person into my life. Too easy, right? I was onto it, so I made my very long list, right? But I didn't just put it up on the fridge. No. I put it beside my bed, I put it in the car, I put it in my diary, I put it anywhere where I could focus all my attention on attracting this gorgeous, perfect man who would fall madly in love with me and we'd live happily ever after. Well, that was also around the time when I started my counseling training, and I was taking all kinds of really interesting courses. And it was in one of those courses that I met this super nice, very funny and very attractive man. He ticked so many of the boxes on my list of qualities that I started to believe, oh my God, he's the one. I was amazed, right? This stuff really works. I was so excited. So, of course, we became fast friends. Now remember, I'm good at the making friends part, right? That wasn't the challenge for me. The challenge for me wasn't getting him to like me. Rather, it was more about, how do I get him to fall in love with me? So we started hanging out together. We became real fast friends, right? And one night we went out for dinner, and this was the night that I was hoping we could kind of just step it up a little bit, you know, go from being just friends to maybe a little bit more than friends. Can't remember exactly how the conversation went, but he must have picked up on that because he reached over, he took my hand and he looked me in the eye and he said, you know, my mother would love you, Denise. I'm thinking, well, that's a pretty good sign, right? He's talking about me meeting his mom and her liking me. I'm feeling hopeful. I'm waiting for what next. Except I'm looking at him and he's like squirming in his seat. He's all flushed. He's uncomfortable. And I start to panic and I'm thinking, oh my God, he already has a girlfriend. He just didn't tell me. Or worse yet, he's married. So I'm going through all these worst possible scenarios in my mind. And finally he just leans over and he goes, Denise, I'm gay. Well, let's just say that just reinforced my already existing strong belief that all the good ones are either already taken, married, or gay. Well, we've remained great friends over the years. Had a good laugh about it. Because, you know, it wasn't something to do with me personally. I didn't feel like he was rejecting me like I might have felt that before, but it did make me wonder, though, why I had attracted someone again who wasn't really available. I realized that the common denominator in all of these situations was always me. It seemed like I had attracted more proof and evidence to back up that epiphany I'd had, and it just reinforced my suspicion that perhaps it wasn't about the men, but more to do about me. So at that point, I made a pact with myself to stop looking outside of myself for love and instead to start to look inside at what was really going on in there. Now, lucky for me, remember, I just started my counseling training. So I wasn't only learning a whole heap of information about the power of limiting beliefs and old programming and how those can run your life, but I was also accumulating a whole toolbox of tools and techniques that came in really handy when it came to helping me change those unhealthy beliefs and patterns. I soon discovered that my quest to find love was more about finding myself than finding a man. I had to learn to love and value myself first, and that's what made the big difference. That was the key. It was a 3-year journey of ups and downs and learning and healing, but in the end, I did meet the love of my life. I met him 5 years earlier while I was cycling through China. So the timing hadn't been right for us back then, though. For one thing, he was only 22 and I was 31 when we met. And for another thing, he was from Australia and I was from Canada. But somehow, when we magically reconnected 5 years later, everything lined up. We've been happily married for over 20 years now. And because I was in my late 30s by the time we got married, I was afraid I'd miss out on having kids, you know. Maybe, 20 years ago, there weren't as many women having kids later on in life as there are today. But I'm happy to say that at 41, I gave birth to a healthy baby boy. You know, there's this quote that I really, really love, and it says, being single only means that you are patient enough to wait for someone you deserve and who really deserves you. So I'm so glad I didn't give up, or worse yet, settle for someone that wasn't quite right. I ignored people telling me I was too picky or too much of a dreamer. I was stubborn, and I wasn't going to settle for anything less than the best. Now, my friends, they'd seen me at my worst over the years, right? They saw me go through the, hurt and despondent phases and the desperate phases. So when I finally introduced them to this gorgeous young Aussie man who kind of just seemed to appear out of nowhere, they could see that I was finally truly happy and head over heels in love. It's one thing to fall in love. It's quite another to feel someone else fall in love with you just as deeply. There's nothing quite like it. That's the kind of love that really knocks your socks off. So people were curious about what I'd done to make that happen, especially my single friends. All of a sudden, people stopped saying that I was too picky, and instead they kept saying, "Oh, you're so lucky." Well, I think it was a little bit more than luck, believe me. Anyways, I decided that, if it worked for me, it could also work for others who are also ready to attract the love of their life, right? So if you're one of these women, I've developed a step-by-step program using many of the great tools and techniques I've picked up over the years, and it's based on what I discovered made the big difference. I've helped many people attract love by improving the relationship they have with themselves. That's always where we start, because that's the key. This is what I love doing, it's what I'm most passionate about, and it's what I want to share with you. So if you're ready for that big love to come into your life, I encourage you to continue to watch these videos. I promise you that by the end of this video series, you're not only going to become aware of what has been preventing you from attracting that big love, but also what you can do about it. So enough about me. Let's go back to the 3 mistakes most single women make that keeps them attracting dead-end relationships. So let's have a look. So the first mistake is this, the B word. This is the B word that's killing your chances of finding true love. Okay? The second mistake here says wrong focus. Okay? So you've been believe it or not, you've been focusing on the wrong thing. And the third one, the biggest mistake, is that you're more than likely unaware that you have core limiting beliefs and they're running the show, because our beliefs truly do create our reality. So let's have a look at the first massive mistake, this B word here. That's killing your chances of finding true love. Any guesses as to what the B word is? Do you want to know what the most popular guess has been from women so far? Well, it's been bastard. It's not bastard, by the way. No. The B word is blaming. Look, you may be blaming the bastard, but it's not the bastard that's the problem. It's the blaming. Okay, so the good old blame game. Blaming is what we do when we refuse to take responsibility for our current situation. Instead, we'll focus on outside factors as the reason for the fact that we're still single. It's the excuses we make to justify our situation. They kind of sound like this. All the good ones are already taken. Men only want younger women. You know, I'm too busy. I don't have time to look for love. Or how about this one? Men don't want a woman with kids. Or the only way to meet men these days is through internet dating. And you know what? I don't want to do that. I don't want to go there. So do you see how all of these excuses are based on something outside of yourself? So for me, I had to make sense of all that rejection, right? Well, at the time, it seemed much easier for me to blame the men than myself. I'd say things like, oh, he's got a commitment phobia, or he's emotionally unavailable, he should really work on that. Or he's so shallow, he's only interested in women with perfect bodies, not what's on the inside. Get the idea? So I encourage you to come up with your own list. It's not hard to do at all, believe me. If you don't understand and accept the fact that the reason you're still single has nothing to do with these external factors, all right, there's one exception. Unless you live on a deserted island and you're totally cut off from the outside world, then yeah, okay, maybe. But generally, it has everything to do with what's going on inside. And until you address that, you're going to keep attracting those dead-end relationships, or no relationship at all for that matter. So I'd love to introduce you right now to a couple of patterns here that are really, really important to understand. It's the disempowerment pattern versus the empowerment pattern. So we're going to look at, first of all, the disempowerment program, okay? The disempowerment program. So I call it the verb, the V-E-R-B. It's an acronym. V stands for victim. So victim is when we feel things are happening to us, we have no power over them. You know, it's the, oh, poor me, they're doing this to me. Get it? All right. Entitlement. So let's have a look at entitlement here. It's the condition of having a right to have, do, or get something. It's kind of like the feeling or belief that you deserve to be given something without necessarily having to do anything to earn it. You know, people receiving welfare payments sometimes feel entitled. Our children can feel very entitled at times too. Celebrities can sometimes have an arrogant sense of entitlement. You know, just because I'm a celebrity, I can walk into a restaurant without a reservation and get the best table in the house. Okay, does that make sense? All right, so rescue. Let's look at rescue. Well, the rescue is about, please let Prince Charming come into my life and rescue me. It's the fairy tale ending. I don't want to do anything about it, but I want someone to come along and make it all better for me. You know, do you know what my very most favorite, best fairy tale ending of all is? It's realizing that, you know, we never really needed to be rescued in the first place. All right, so let's have a look at blaming here. So blaming, well, you already know this one, right? Blaming, as long as you're blaming something or someone outside of yourself for your situation, you're going to feel powerless. So you can be in any one of these or all of them. But you know what? As long as you are operating out of this model, you're going to feel powerless to make a change in your life. Okay, so now we're going to look at the flip side to that. That one is called the empowerment program. And this one is the OAR, O-A-R. Again, it's an acronym, right? By the way, have you ever tried to, you know, paddle a boat upstream without an oar? It's hard work, right? You need an oar to help you paddle your boat in the right direction. So O stands for ownership. Ownership is owning that the reason you're where you're at is because of you and nobody else. Okay? Accountability is being answerable, being honest with yourself, and account for your feelings and actions. And then responsibility is accepting that you are the person who caused something to happen and that you are responsible for your feelings. You know, lots of people like to make others responsible for their feelings. Oh, you make me feel so angry. Or better yet, oh, you make me so happy. You know, no one can make you feel anything. We're in charge of our feelings. Yes, someone may be treating us in that special way and we're choosing to feel happy in that moment. But too often we give other people, you know, the responsibility or the credit for making us feel a certain way. Of course, sure, they can certainly push a button that can create a reaction for you, but you're responsible for that reaction. Okay, so in conclusion, mistake 1 is not taking responsibility for where you're at and blaming something or someone outside of yourself for the fact that you're single. That mistake will keep you stuck and it'll keep you from attracting the kind of love you desire. So, you know, when I started taking responsibility for what I was attracting in my life, after I had that epiphany, that's when things really started to change. So if this resonates with you and you want to know more about the other 2 mistakes and what you can do about them, I invite you to watch the next 2 videos. You know, keep in mind what Einstein once said. The consciousness that created the problem cannot be the same consciousness that solves it.